This is A Voice, a podcast with Dr. Gillian Kayes and Jeremy Fisher.
This is A Voice.
Hello and welcome to This is A Voice Season 12, Episode 4.
The podcast where we get vocal about voice.
I'm Jeremy Fisher.
And I'm Dr. Gillian Kayes.
And 13 years ago, we did a webinar called
Finding the You in Every Song.
Going Beyond Technique with the Music, the Words, the Purpose and the Context to Find Your Best.
Can I just say something? I think we were possibly a little ahead of our time.
We certainly were.
In this sense, because people are talking a lot now about how the teaching of singing is a shared space between the singer in the room, the student, and the teacher or the guide. And I think we've been doing this for a very, very long time, haven't we?
In fact, we're still doing masterclasses on the topic, finding the you in every song, because it seems to be a thing which is, rather than making noises, you want to find the version that is you. And in every song, I said this a lot, every song has an envelope, and within that envelope you can be you. So we're going to talk today about being you in a song.
And we are drawing from insights that we gained and chatted about in the car all the way home, actually, from a workshop that we did back in November in the UK, because we had a very wide variety of song material.
It certainly did.
And I think part of the challenge that you get as a teacher or a workshop leader is also that you may be presented with music in a genre that you don't know. Obviously, you've got to do a bit of homework beforehand. And then it's how you navigate that with the singer to find out what the genre envelope is, as far as you understand it, how they understand it, and then the decisions they want to make so that they can own the song.
Yeah.
And we went through that process, didn't we? It was great.
Yeah.
And there's also the challenge, isn't there, for the teacher or the guide or the workshop leader when you're working with song material you haven't seen before. We always do our homework. We always insist on knowing what the songs are. But it could be a genre that you're unfamiliar with. And then you need to work out for yourself what you think the performance envelope, if you like, is. And then you discuss it with the singer in the room. How do they want to deliver it? And then, of course, our job, if we're thinking from a more vocal, technical side, is how do we map that onto that particular singer's voice?
I think there's been a shift in technique. I would like to think there's a shift in technique. I think technique 50 years ago was, these are the sounds you need to make, I'm going to teach you these sounds. Mm-hmm. I think even 20 years ago, these are the sounds you're going to make and I need to teach you these sounds. And I think the shift is happening much more to go, what is it that you want to do with this song? Who are you? How do you want to express yourself? Let's make sure that your technique allows you to do that really easily. I think it's very different. So you're not starting from the point of, here is my list of sounds that I want you to make. You're starting from the point of view of, how do you want to communicate this song? Let's find the sounds that work on you and make sure that they're healthy.
I think part of the collaborative work that you and I have done together, that's contributed to a change of thinking for me, because I came from a very mainstream classical background where you had to develop certain skills as a classical singer and certain sounds and certain types of agility and all the rest of it that are part of the classical music canon. And so my idea when I started out singing teaching was that I was supposed to develop that with my singers. But you were the one that always said, yeah, but what is the context?
Always.
So we're very, very keen on this when we're working with our own teachers, which is what's the context? What's the context of the song? And always framing a lesson within that.
My background is very different in that, although I'm very heavily classically trained and I did all of the classical thing and I still perform as a classical musician, I have almost always worked as a collaborative pianist, a collaborative musician. So I can't play the same for everybody that walks in, even on the same song. I can't play the same because that person comes in with their own thing. So my question always when I'm working with other people is, what's your version of the song? Where do you fit in the envelope? What can I do? What do I need to do to change what I do in order to work with you? So I've always had that background thought going on.
Let's talk a little bit about the idea that every song has an internal logic. This is partly to do with the envelope that we're talking about, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that if you can understand the internal logic of the song, I mean, Sondheim, for example, is a fabulous type of music to look at. Almost any of his songs, there is this internal logic. It's there.
Well, hang on. Let's break this down. You have two things. You have the internal logic of music, and you have the internal logic of the lyrics, and they are different. And when you sing a song, you have to bring both of them together. We have a lot of stories about when this does and doesn't work. And I want to start with one, which is key. Let's talk about key.
Oh, sense of key. Okay, you start.
Sense of key, sense of pitch, sense of tuning, sense of all of that stuff. And I have a story working in a masterclass in Australia, and I was doing a Richard Strauss song, which is early 20th century classical, and I knew that the singer was singing all the notes, but I could also tell that she didn't know what the key was. And so all the notes were there, but they weren't quite there. It didn't sit inside the music. And so and it's a very complex piano part, and I decided to help her by breaking it down into single chords. And the moment I put a single chord down, she could tune all the melody to that chord. And then when the chord changed, we put another chord down and she could tune all the melody to that. And it took maybe 5 minutes, if that. And at the end of the 5 minutes, she could sing the whole song, not just in tune, but in key. And I think those two things are very different.
We've talked about singing the notes isn't the same as understanding the key.
Absolutely not.
It's irrelevant whether you read the dots or not.
Yeah.
That's not the point.
You can do it by feel and ear.
Yeah. Tuning is very much contextual, and within, I think, pretty much every musical type. I'm not just talking about the Western canon of music.
Nope.
I'm talking about across the globe. There are tuning systems.
Yes.
And the singer needs to understand that tuning system and be familiar with it and navigate their voice around it. And one of the jobs of the teacher is to help them do that. So that the example you just gave with the Strauss, because obviously I was there and I remember it, and there was, is it okay for us to say, there was something off about the performance?
Mm-hmm. And this was quite subtle. It's quite odd to work out what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
We knew the performance wasn't working. But as a highly experienced musician, I'm just going, no, you don't know what the key is.
So with you playing the chords, there was almost a sense of the harmonics that go with that note and,
Yep.
and locking into that.
Yep.
Which, by the way, for anyone here who sings small ensemble work, you know that you have to do that with the ensemble.
There's something else as well, which is tuning is vertical and horizontal. So bear with me while I talk that through. Tuning is vertical in that you sing a note and it's part of a chord. It's part of a harmony. It can be a happy chord in the harmony, a happy note in the harmony, or it can be a clash. It doesn't matter, but it's part of that vertical chord. But because music has flow to it, then it's also part of a bigger phrase structure, and even that is part of a bigger key structure, and even that is part of a bigger song structure, which can have several keys in it. So pitching, tuning, if you like, is vertical and horizontal.
I really like that. And I want to talk about something we often discuss with our own teachers, and something that I have noticed, which is, and you're going to call me old-fashioned, call me old-fashioned.
You're old-fashioned.
I think because we live in an age where it's possible to download a performance or listen to a performance on YouTube of almost every song available, unless it's a new song. And there's nothing wrong with this, by the way, in playing with the backing tracks. But if you're not careful, you're learning totally by ear, note by note, and you'll get your words right and you'll get your notes right, but you haven't understood the structure.
Yep.
You haven't understood perhaps the arc of the song.
Yep.
You're singing it right, and yet it's not there. And I often hear young singers, and I'm listening to something that perhaps a teacher has put forward with one of their singers, and I say, they're not seated in the key. Mm-hmm. And in fact, this is a fairly new term for me. There's something that says, no, that's not sitting right within the key. And I do think it's really important for those of you who are working with singers who are learning in that way Just to really break things down, there are apps that you can use where you strip away the vocals altogether and you work with the backing tracks. That's a great thing to do. And if you are a keyboard player, to do what Jeremy did, which is just to play simple chords, do a bit of vamping, note things like the key change, and just get the singer to listen.
Ooh, can we talk about key changes? Because key changes are really interesting. They are often signals that something has happened or something is about to happen or something is happening. And one of the things about a song and internal logic is you look for change points. You look for what happens when something changes. And there was working with a singer ages ago, and there was a lovely example of there was a change point in the song, but she sailed through it. And I'm going, no, the music has changed key. Also, the music has changed speed. So something really major has happened in the story. You can't sail through it. You actually have to acknowledge that something is happening. So it's really interesting when people, when you're learning a song, you look for the points where the key changes, the feel changes, the speed changes, the dynamics change. You're always looking for change points. For me, it's very much like the way I sight read, which is that's a blur. Yeah, fine, I can do all of those. I'm looking for the bits that I'm not sure about or the bits where something changes, and then I can focus on those.
That's a very good point. And I think that brings us to the idea that people memorise too quickly.
Yeah.
And congratulations, you've memorised your song, particularly if you're in a higher education institution and you have to learn a lot of material and you have to memorise it. I had to do that when I was performing as a singer. But if you learn too fast, what you've done, because what you've got to remember is that singing song material is what we call predictive behaviour of the brain. In other words, what we learn is we learn how to map the phrases and the melody with the words. There are what we call breath groups and breath patterns with that, and also feedback within the system of pressure and resonance shapes. So you learn all of that, then it becomes a predictive behaviour in the brain. It's like a Google map. It's already programmed. It's very difficult to change if that is already well embedded and you've missed some of the material. And Jeremy, you have some strategies to help with that, don't you, I think, for, rehearsal?
Yes, we've already talked about simplifying the accompaniment to chords, and that's very interesting. I do a speed run. And a speed run is sing the song 4 times faster because it will key you into, excuse the pun, where the change points are, where the phrases start and finish, and also how well you know the lyrics. Because what you're noticing in a speed run is, where do I hesitate, even for a fraction of a second? And if I hesitate there, that is a little bit, I haven't worked out what the link between those two phrases are, or the link between those two words are. So that's the first thing. Speaking the text as prose, a lot of people are doing this now, and I do think it's really useful. There is a danger of learning lyrics to the music because you learn the lyrics in the rhythm.
Dum-de-dum.
Yeah, of the composer. And when we ask people, it's so funny, in a masterclass, when we ask people to do just the lyrics as a speech, when someone has learnt the lyrics to the music, because it comes out in exactly the rhythm
And
it's
they
been written in.
faithfully do all the rhythms and pause where the rests are.
Yeah, and often we have to mess about with that because they haven't understood the text that's underneath it.
Yeah, and I do understand that if you don't come from a theatre background, Jeremy and I have obviously worked for many years with theatre performers, it can be a bit embarrassing because the singer might say, yes, but I'm not an actor. And one of my favourite techniques, I have two actually for that, which I'll share here. One is that I'll role play. So I'll get them to say a line and then I'll interrupt them.
With a cue line for the next line.
Yeah, so for example,
if
you were doing I Remember Sky, then I'll say, what about it? What do you mean, sky? Oh, it was blue as ink. Or at least I think. Oh, do you mean you don't really know? There are all sorts of things that you can use. You have to think on your feet and you need the lyrics in front of you if you do that.
There's a lovely example of this on TikTok that I saw a couple of weeks ago where a coach goes through, sitting at the piano, goes through I Can't Say No from Oklahoma, and he actually rewrites the lyrics for it, for the actual meaning behind the words. It is so good. And I cheered when I saw it because we've been teaching this for 25 years. And it was so good to see somebody else do this and do it so well.
And just so you
I'm
know,
going to put the link in the description.
yeah, it's amazing. It's really reframing it, and that's particularly important if you're considering social history. So this particular song is about a girl who can't say no, who is therefore a bad girl. And you need to be able to reframe this if you're going to sing the song viably these days.
Interestingly,
Or even then, in my opinion. But
built into that song is that she's made out to be a bad girl by everybody else, but she actually doesn't understand it because she's going, I'm being truthful.
yeah,
How is that bad?
I'm doing what works for me.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, really interesting take. And also that technique works for any song with any lyrics. So sometimes it will bring you towards a more musical theatre performance, but in a way, that's still part of the learning process. So you can go back and you can do whatever you like. I think if you take a set of lyrics and you go, what's the feel, what's the vibe, what's going on, what's in the background, why is this lyric here? Why is this word here? Why has this been changed? Why am I repeating this? Which is a really interesting one, particularly for contemporary commercial pop, which often has a lot of repetition. It has choruses, it has all sorts. So the question is, why am I repeating it? Is it just an effect? Is it a feel? What is it? So we ask these questions.
So my other trick, which I must admit I learned from colleagues when I was working in drama schools, is to get the singer to do something. And this is really useful if the singer already knows the material. So they've memorised it well. And they're stuck in a performance rut and you want to change it. Give them something to do.
Completely unrelated? Okay.
Completely unrelated. You could say, for example, here's a duster. I want you to go round the room dusting and cleaning.
It's extremely useful as a technique, and it also gets your room cleaned.
Or I might give them my bag, my rucksack. Of course, I have to check what's in there and make sure there's nothing embarrassing in there. But basically, I could say, I want you to unpack this and to just have a look at everything and just be curious about it. And then maybe lay it out to do what you want with it, an organised fashion or whatever people want to do. And you know what? It is fascinating what comes out of something like that, because every time afterwards, we worked with someone singing Green Finch and Linnet, didn't we? And it was lovely.
From Sondheim.
Yes, it's Sweeney
Sweeney
Todd.
Todd.
Yes, it's Joanna looking at the birds. And she knew what the story was, and she also knew that she was stuck. So we gave her this to do. And afterwards I said, how did that go? Which is one of the ways that I like to ask how it was for the singer, to get that feedback. And she said, lots of different things came out. I was really surprised. And this is someone with no acting training, much more of a choral singer. And then it was a matter of taking that forward into the performance and crafting it in that way.
Yes.
So those are two really helpful interventions you can do.
It's like you're finding out whether you learnt a song or whether you learnt the story. And I think that's really fascinating. And obviously in musical theatre, story is paramount. So yes, you can make all sorts of noises, but we still have to know who's doing what, when, where, and exactly at that point.
I mean, I never go into a masterclass, particularly if it's a public one, without something like a squeeze ball or something that the singer can hold in their hand and feel and look at, because it's also a great way, particularly if the ball is a little bit squishy, it's a great way to get feedback and change what you're doing internally in the mechanism. So, for example, from a technical point of view, if someone is singing at very high pressure, because they're heading up for a belt note and they're tanking up all the energy before they get there, I might say, just gently roll the ball in your hand, just because it's no good at that stage. You're in a public masterclass, reduce your subglottal pressure. That is not going to work. So it's a very tactile way that then I think informs the mechanism and starts to change the behaviour. So there are all my secrets now.
I want to go back to what's in the music and the text. We've talked a bit about key and what's in the music, but I just want to talk about stuff that's in the text. And we've already said one of the favourite things to do is to take the lyrics as a script and work it as a script, work it as if you were an actor or as if it was a speech that you were making at a wedding or something like that. And I think what's so fascinating is some of the stuff that's hidden in text and some of the stuff that's implied in the text but not actually stated. There is a beautiful example in Not for the Life of Me
Thoroughly
from
Modern
Thoroughly
Millie.
Modern Millie. And it was really fascinating because, okay, first of all, at this point, there is a key change, there is a tempo change, there's a feel change.
A real energy change.
It's a real energy change. And what was so fascinating is that both Gillian and I entirely separately came up with exactly the same thing that happened that wasn't in the script, that wasn't referred to in any way, but we both said exactly the same thing. In the bit before this change, she is holding a return ticket that her family have insisted that she buys because they don't think she's going to make it. And so they think she's going to be back any time. And the whole thing is there's a tempo, feel, energy change, which is Not for the Life of Me, I'm not going back. And both of us said, almost at the same time, she rips the ticket up. Because that is a very definite movement. It's a very definite decision. And the decision comes before the tempo change. It comes in the silence.
Yeah, and there's nothing in the script per se that says that. So I think the words are a ticket in my pocket to do with as I choose. And then suddenly it's burn the bridge is what she says next.
Yeah.
And that, for us, very clearly, it's an indicator she's burnt the bridge, which is she's actually ripped the ticket up. Now, this may be very obvious to people I presume she does it in the film.
Not in the film, it's only on the stage.
The thing is, when you hear that energetic change and you hear those first words, you know that in the space between the previous section and the new section, and it's a micro space, something has occurred.
Something has occurred. Okay, and that brings me to my next bit, which is when are decisions made in the song?
Oh,
At
you mean
what
in the
point
learning?
in the actual song, when do you make decisions? And this is so interesting that so often when people are learning a song, they will play the end of the song. They haven't got there yet. Or they'll make a decision and plan it too early, or they won't even notice that a decision has been made and just skate straight through it. So the question is, when are decisions made that the character makes? Precisely what point does that decision happen? And I think, again, this is so fascinating, and it really helps you not just learn the song, but structure the song as well. And again, there is an example in the same song, I think, which is different song, same character, different song, which is, the one that mentions Cupid. Everybody will know if they've seen the show which one, where she decides between love and money. And
Give me Fat Boy's famous arrow.
Thank you, yes.
My favourite line from that song.
Gimme Gimme.
Yeah.
And there is a point where she makes the decision to go with love. I have got them to play where she makes the decision to go with the money. And it's very, very interesting noticing how the whole song changes if you then change the song in that way. Then they go back to the original, which is I'm going for love, and the song is different. Because they've realised that a decision has to be made at some point in the song. And usually people make it too early in that song. So it's one of my favourite things, which is what's happening, what's occurring, and when.
So what you were doing there in theatre speak, we talk about playing against the text, playing against it. Again, it's an intervention for the singer to realise what they're doing. And they have to realise it internally if they're going to inhabit the song. And I think that's very important.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. This is not just about making noises, people.
Yeah. I think there's something else to be said about the idea of you know what the song is about, you know where it goes, you've got feelings about the song. You start playing the end of the song right at the beginning. I hear this a lot, usually with musical theatre performers, because they're very invested in a feeling in the song. And it's very nice that they're sharing that with you. But what we have to do is make sure, this is when we're doing a performance, that the song lands for the people who are listening to it. I do feel quite strongly about this. So here we're saying performative singing. And sometimes that means you actually have to stand back from that lovely feeling you've got about that particular song. And I know we talked about this with the singer, didn't we, with Sondheim's I Remember, which is a very, in many ways, internalised, reflective song. It's got a lot of sadness in it, I think.
Yes.
It's a very sad song. And because it's about things lost and things only barely remembered.
But I don't think you can play the song sad. That's the problem.
But if you don't do the joyous memory and the discovery, the rediscovery of those memories during the song,
Yep.
then it's not much of an experience for the audience. And it's something that you do need to be aware of. And although story is in some ways less important, perhaps in some of the CCM styles, although in fact the songs that we did all had stories, they were very interesting on that particular occasion. You still need to look at what the arc of the song is for the listeners and how they're going to respond to it.
Yes. Oh, can we talk about one of the songs that we did, which was a real wild card?
Are we talking about Hast Thou Considered the Tetrapod?
We are. I love that song.
Thank you to the singer who brought that to the workshop. It is, would you describe it as, it's a rock, grunge, slightly grungy rock song?
No, it's got punk elements in it, but it's a ballad. It's just slightly subversive.
Yeah,
I think
and
it's the best version of it. It's a subversive ballad.
performed by the Mountain Goats.
Yeah.
Now, on this occasion, we didn't have sheet music, did we? We
No.
only had the lyrics.
Yep.
And so there's a lot of listening going on. I'm going to share what I first heard. Because Jeremy had told me about the song, and I listened to...
I did actually know it, yeah.
Yeah, I listened to him singing, and I thought, oh, that sounds like a contemporary musical theatre singer. Is this a cover number?
Yeah.
Because it would fit very well in
Oh, a show like
contemporary
Bear.
musical theatre rock.
Yep.
Yeah, very much.
Yeah.
And of course, I was fascinated by the lyrics.
If you haven't heard the song, please go and listen to it. It is amazing.
Yeah,
And some quite dark lyrics.
very, very dark lyrics.
It was very interesting working with that particular singer because he had a beautiful voice. It was the first thing I said. It was really beautiful.
Oh, he sang it really well. He was totally on top of it, vocally, technically. It was just the right kind of sound if you listen to the recording. And his voice could manage it, singing in that pitch range, and it had the power as well.
And it was interesting because my first question was, what do you want to do? And he said, I don't sound like me. And I went, let's find out what you sound like then. Which is absolutely fascinating statement.
Yeah, and do you know what was interesting? And we can talk more about what we did with this singer, perhaps. But there was a certain point, because we had some teachers in the room, as well as other singers, and they were putting forward feedback. And one of the teachers said, but I really liked the first performance. I think that's right for the song.
It was really interesting because I loved the first performance, but if his first sentence is, I don't sound like me, then I'm going to say, great, let's find out what you sound like. And
It's not my version,
yes.
is what he said.
Yeah.
So really, he was saying, I'm not inhabiting that song.
Yeah. So we did a whole load of experimentation where I did not demonstrate anything. I just gave instructions, let's do this, let's try that. And so we did a lot of experimentation. It was really interesting. And I took him down some bizarre routes vocally. But it was really interesting finding out what his preferred sound was. Absolutely fascinating experiment, because it's one of those where somebody does something and you go, that's really good. Why would I change it? But I changed it because he wanted me to.
It was a much stronger emotional journey,
Yeah.
I think, when we found the sounds that he wanted to make.
I think it was also interesting because the sounds that, we gave him 3 or 4 different types of sound. I also said, by the way, almost when he said, I don't sound like me, and almost the first thing that came out of my mouth was, we don't have one sound. And I'm still fairly good on that, which is we don't have one sound. It could be that the music genre that you work in does have a sound that you are required to produce. Classical is famous for that. And that if you change the sound too much, then you might not get the roles or you might not get the audience. But in reality, we don't have one sound. We have lots and lots of different sounds and lots of different colours.
Yeah, you did say that, and I absolutely agree with it. And I think what we uncovered, because this is a very self-aware person, is that in saying I don't sound like me, what he was really saying is, this isn't my version of the song. How do I find my version?
And the masterclass was called Finding the You in Every Song, so that's what we're doing.
Really delighted to be introduced to that.
And we're going to just briefly, we're going to talk about the difference between interpretation and inhabitation. And interpretation is, this is my take on the song, this is what I do, this is what I've heard other people do, and I like it, so I've kept that bit. And you piece together something which is a really, really lovely interpretation, but you're not inhabiting the song. And I think it's a really big difference when you see it in action. And that was a beautiful example of it, which is the first version was the most beautiful interpretation of the song. I loved it, but it wasn't him.
It was a good performance.
He wasn't there. So we worked on getting him to inhabit the song and inhabit the lyrics and inhabit the whole ethos of what the song is about, which he knew very well. He just didn't know how to access it. Yeah, the difference between interpretation and inhabitation. I'm all for inhabitation.
And that goes back to the you.
Yes,
The
it
you
really
of the
does.
song. Now, I think we've got something quite interesting we could talk about here, which is how to diagnose a song that never quite lands. And we're going to use this word lands in the sense of it's working, but something isn't complete about it. And that might be for the singer.
Yes.
And it might be for the audience. This depends on where you are in terms of learning a song, whether you're preparing for an exam or a performance or something like that, or if you're working with an avocational singer who's just singing for the love of it, finding out what it means for them if the song isn't landing.
If you're working with somebody who is singing for pleasure, there are two people in the room, you and the student. If you're working with somebody who is working towards performative version, there are three people in the room, you, the singer, and the audience. And the audience may or may not be there. You have to be aware of what the audience might expect for that particular thing. I think it's really interesting when we have talked a little bit about this. The performer performs emotional shapes, but not thoughts. Now, emotional shapes are really interesting. It's look at me, I'm acting. And we go, yeah, we can see that. Don't do that. This is about finding your way into those emotional shapes. And that involves either, some people do it completely automatically. Some people do it and it's so natural, it's falling off a log, they know exactly what they're doing. They don't even think about it. They probably couldn't analyse it if you asked them. But some people have that skill just to inhabit emotion immediately. A lot of us don't. So a lot of us need some thought or need some guidance or need some shapes or whatever it is that we need in order to find our way into our version of that emotion. And then we have already talked about this. There's no reason for the gear change. It's a lovely sentence.
I think this is actually a big thing at the moment, particularly when you're looking at contemporary music styles. There's loads and loads of stuff out there. Oh, you've got to find your mix. I've got to make this sound here and that sound there. And I'm not just talking about musical theatre. I'm talking about almost the stress that I think singers are under, that if they're listening to a song that they want to sing, they want to do it the way the artist sings it. This is something that comes up a lot from our teachers. So that if you're working with a teenage girl or boy and they want to sing something that is performed by a mature voice and they want to sing it in that key and in that way, they can't always manage it. And so there's an expectation, and I think recording does that for us. And I also think that the whole environment of the way that we trained as classical musicians,
Yeah.
did I see an eye roll there?
No. That was a roll of agreement.
Yeah, okay, a roll
Yeah.
of agreement.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is that there are certain ways you are supposed to do the song. And sure, in a performing context, there may well be, particularly professional performing context. But I think it's more about how does your voice navigate this? What kind of sound can we make? How do we feel about that? If it's not working for us, maybe there is some work that we need to do in order to find the sounds that you want to make, or maybe we can change the key.
And there's some other part of this agreement as well, which is when you're dealing with contemporary commercial music, you're dealing with a recording studio, you're dealing with producers, you're dealing with the fact that the singer actually doesn't sound like that in real life. There are all sorts of processes that can be done on a voice, including tone changes, key changes, all sorts of things, note changes, vowel changes as well. And so what often happens is that the singer will produce something in the studio. The producer will then shape it in a way that wasn't actually recorded. And then the singer has to reproduce that. That's the original singer has to reproduce that, or they have to have a shed load of equipment when they go on tour in order to reproduce it live. And the students go, oh, the singer sounds like this. And we go, no, the singer doesn't sound like that at all. It was really interesting. There are some rare recordings online where you hear what the singer actually inputted.
And let's be clear on this. We are not talking about casting shade here.
No, of course not.
We are talking about a different genre.
Yeah.
So that if we're in a position where we're listening to the performance of one of our favourite artists, what we're listening to is the result of a recorded sound, and I don't want to say that manipulated. EQ is an obvious manipulation, but we're listening to a recorded sound output. That's what the genre is. Mm-hmm. So what you then need to work on with the singer is what's your input.
Yes.
And in the masterclass that we've been referring to, there were several songs that were done with a microphone, and there were times when we had to intervene and say, do you know what, you're projecting into that microphone and you don't need to. Let's take the mic away, let's listen to the sound level there. Now let's bring that sound down. Now let's get feedback from the audience, because now you've actually got the mic right in front of you. How is it landing for them? And I think it's really important that if you're working with developing singers who want to sing in those genres, you have at least some understanding of what happens with the microphone, and so that they have some understanding of it. And then obviously at a higher level, we've got singers who need to have agency when they're working with their producers.
Yep.
So that what comes out is actually what they want to come out.
Yes.
And that they can go and perform.
Yes.
Ooh, that was fun.
So we have a lot more that we could say, but we're going to wrap up on this one. And we want you to invite you to tell us how you work with learning a song, and actually how you work with teaching learning songs.
Do share your thoughts, because obviously we've shared ours from our perspective, and we come from a particular context. But if you are working with singers, or you're needing to learn songs for either for pleasure or for a performative aspect, what's your process? How do you break it down? How do you go about it?
Let us know.
Yeah.
We'll see you soon. Bye. This is A Voice, a podcast with Dr. Gillian Kays and Jeremy Fisher.